Are you at all familiar with the feeling of disconnection, with the sense of a deep and pervasive emptiness that seems to penetrate your existence like a quiet hum throughout your life? I used to be this way. I experienced the world as though there was a cold core in my chest, some kind of unfillable well of emptiness. It's quite a common thing, actually. In fact, according to some psychoanalysts that we're going to look into, it's a necessary part of what it means to have a subjective experience. However, what if the cause of this suffering was hiding in plain sight? What if the source of this emptiness was built into the way in which you see the world, that you physically view the world? Today, we're going to look at how your visual field shapes your actual experience of reality, why it can cause so much suffering, and how you can turn this pervasive sense of emptiness from something troublesome into something boundless, beautiful, and bountiful. Jacque Lacan provides an excellent framework for understanding the pervasive kind of emptiness, the sense that you occasionally have that others have it all figured out, whereas you do not. It stems from his mirror stage theory. Lacan proposes that every child goes through a period of self-recognition the first time they see themselves in the mirror at around the ages of 6 to 18 months old. Consider the child's lived experience. It's one of internal chaos, where emotions will reign, where there's a feeling of being disjointed, where your actual sense of how your body is, how it moves, is incomplete, chaotic. Your very ego is fragmented, parts of your personality war against each other. In short, the child's private experience is one of chaos. So what happens when they first see themselves in the mirror and have this moment of self-recognition? All of a sudden, they're seeing an image of some being who is whole, who is complete, and they recognize this being as themselves. And herein a tension is created between the internal experience of this child, of one that is chaotic and disjointed, with the external vision, the image of the child, which is one that is collected together, a being that makes sense holistically. For Lacan, this forms the start of the ideal I, or the ideal ego. This is a fantasy of completeness, and will lead to a perpetual gap between what we think we should be based on our external perceptions and the ways in which we experience ourselves to actually be, therefore leading to ceaseless comparisons and to a ceaseless sense of something lacking. And so we carry this habit of perception into our adult lives, always looking at the contrast between what we imagine we should be and how we actually experience ourselves. Consider your actual moment-to-moment experience. Who you experience yourself to be, the internal tensions, one voice wants you to do this, another one wants you to do this, you're performing some action and a voice in the back of your head is telling you to not do it. Your emotional state is one that is chaotic and strange. And in fact, even your physical body, your physical experience of what it's like to be you, is not mapped one-to-one with a perfect reality. At times, if you're experiencing a pain in your back, say, it can seem to stretch out far beyond the confines of your lower back or wherever the pain happens to be. And when you contrast this with the external image that you see, it is completely different. When you perceive others, what you see is this holistic image. You see a self that is functioning and whole, a being that makes sense in and of itself. Whereas if you contrast this with yourself, what you'll find is that you do not have this completeness that they seem to have, this completeness that is inherent to your visual perception of them, therefore creating even more of a sense of disconnection within yourself, furthering this sense of lacking something, this sense of an emptiness at the core. For Lacan, this all contributes to an idea called constitutive alienation, the forever distance between an idealized version of the self and the felt reality of the self. And this is a distance that cannot ever actually be closed completely. This is because visual perception, your views of the outside world, are characterized by wholeness and completeness, whereas your internal experience is characterized by constant change, incessant shifting. And importantly, Lacan sees this not as a bug, but a feature. It is not a pathology to exist in this way. It is what it means to be a human being. Because we are cursed with this subjectivity, any time that we're viewing anybody, we are reinforcing these mechanisms which contribute to the sense of emptiness, the sense of lacking. And thus, so long as these worlds exist, so long as you are a human being out there in the world, you are going to feel the distance between the idealized version of the self and what you actually experience reality to be moment to moment. Through this, then, we can say that it is this emptiness that is characteristic of the human experience. And thus, the sense that this emptiness is what disconnects us from the outside world, is what disconnects us from other people, can be turned on its head completely, as it is actually the sense of emptiness, this pervasive lack, which is what unifies us with other people. We all share this condition. And so this is a feature of our perception. It is drilled into our faculties of sight and our faculties of sensory experience, inescapable, constant, unifying in its disconnectedness. When I first came to this theory, it was fantastic for me, because up to that point, I had always experienced a coldness in my chest. It physically felt like coldness that I associated with feeling disconnected from others. And so Lacan's framing, his statement that this was not abnormal, but was rather simply an aspect of what it means to be a human experiencing the world, turned this into a far friendlier phenomenon. I'm eternally grateful for this intuition pump from Lacan. It made something I always felt was wrong into something that was just right in a perfectly wrong way. However, as I got older, I came to believe that this emptiness that Lacan pointed out is not the end of the road, and there's more that we can go beyond. In fact, I think there are ways of transforming this perception of emptiness into something that is psychologically far more beneficial to live with. As Lacan mentioned, the act of perception is always forming an ideal I, which is then in tension with the I that we experience ourselves to be, and it's this lack which leads to emptiness. We've covered this already. However, I think it's a very important first step, because it turns the emptiness into a friendly phenomenon. But the step beyond that is to investigate even further. What is the nature of that tension? And if you ask that question, when you experience this, where is this arising? Ask yourself, where is the experience of tension arising? Where is the experience of disconnection arising? Upon what field is it occurring? This might sound confusing at first, but I'd encourage you to stick with it and ask this question persistently and with curiosity. I'm going to move on, but know that my words are really useless here, because what we're talking about is an experiential insight. I'll give spoilers anyway. If you ask this question, what you'll find is that the space in which this dissatisfaction is occurring is within this conscious field. And because there is dissatisfaction somewhere, you can find it within your sensory fields. If it wasn't there, it wouldn't be there. So it's not really unconscious, it's part of some aspect of your conscious experience. And then, after identifying it within your field of experience, you can just observe it, and you can learn to relax it. What you will notice is that there is a physiologic tension, a very, very subtle, very slight contraction that occurs when you begin to generate this sense of an ideal I, an ideal ego. And it is totally possible to simply relax this contraction and sit back into the space in which it occurs. Part of the point of doing this exercise and attending to this phenomena again and again is you will begin to see how it is occurring in this broader attentional space. And because this broader attentional space is always here, is ever present, exists where there are contractions, exists where there are pleasures, you'll find that the sense of emptiness itself, the sense of emptiness that comes with this ideal I, with this phenomena that Jacque Lacan was describing, that this is itself full. It is utterly complete. It has content to it. It has a feeling. It has a sense. It's no more or less than any other sensation that occurs within this field. Again, the words are useless here. But when you experience this really, you'll come to find this fascinating shift in perception where emptiness goes from something you are merely friendly towards to something that is friends with everything, that is a part of the whole field unfolding, part of this thing which is in front of you at all times, always. Another way to gesture at this that I quite like is to take your finger and we're going to do some pointing. So point at the floor and what do you see? Point at your foot and what do you see? You see my foot. Your knee, what do you see? Your chest, what do you see? Okay, I see arms, legs, chest. And then point at your face and what do you see? And when you direct your attention this way and you point at your face, what you'll find is that you cannot see your own head. What you're seeing is all that is before you, your own finger pointing at yourself, whatever else in your outside world, whatever else in your environment. As a matter of direct experience, you have no head. Where your head should be, there's just the whole world, the whole sensory visual field before you. A trippy way to understand this as well is if you take your finger point and you spin around and turn, it may seem like the world is moving. However, it's like the scene is moving. There's still just this place at the center of it all which is aware of the sense of movement itself. You can do this as well in a car. A car is a good example because objectively you're moving whatever, 50, 80 kilometers an hour, seeing the world fly by, but your sense of space is constant. And to extend this insight just a tad more, if you're speaking with somebody or face to face with somebody, in that moment, what are you perceiving? Well, your whole visual field is just full of them. You have their face. It is a clear and central part of your perception in that instance. Your face isn't even there. Your head is just like this gateway through which all perception occurs. And for them as well, what they have is your face. This unmediated kind of existence, this very direct contact with what is to me a fantastic evolution upon Lacan's insight into emptiness. It is not only the constitutive alienation, the emptiness inherent to perception, which connects us to other human beings, but it is actually the utter emptiness of our own perception, of the own notion of a self, which unifies us not only with all beings, but with all that occurs within our sensory field. This way of seeing, this new way of relating to what visual perception is, can produce radically different physiologic effects, a radically different physiologic sense of what it means to see. Very simply put, it makes you more open. This is all coming in a far more direct manner. You speak to somebody, you're receiving their face, your very voice rises from this strange silence, this strange thing that predates all other things, as do your thoughts. It's really quite bizarre. I think that what Lacan pointed out is true, that so long as you are existing in the world, perceiving others, that there is always going to be this creation of this ideal ego to bump up against. The tension, the clear contrast between your disjointed internal experience and the seemingly unified external world is always going to create tension. And this will occur. So long as you are perceiving two, the self and the other, it follows naturally, as surely as rainwater will run the path of riverbeds. But you can simply dissolve the distinctions here. You can notice the physiologic essence of self forming and then relax it, and do this over and over again. And through this, you can dissolve the emptiness of psychology into the emptiness of space. You can notice this first form of emptiness as simply another feature among this whole schema, all of which is in a sense already complete. It doesn't require anything, it has no lack. The lack itself is as full as any other phenomena within this field. This is a process of going from the self experiencing the world to the world experiencing the self. And through this, the pervasive emptiness of psychology transmutes into the open emptiness of space.